Wrote for me, but I give you Senator Bob Corker.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Mike Edwards and I have been friends, I think most of you know, for a long, long time. I've known him for over 40 years, as a matter of fact. And we went to UT together, and he was exactly the same way. Never on point, you know. But he does a great job here at the Chamber. I know you've had an outstanding run here, and it's amazing the statistics that have been created here in job creation. And I know that these folks in the rooms are the one that actually create the jobs, but I know the environment that you and Rhonda and others have helped set certainly has made a big difference. So it's always a pleasure to see you. Thank you for hosting these events on my behalf. Thank you for your great friendship, but most importantly for your leadership here in the community and the Chamber's involvement. What I'd like to do today is, as Mike mentioned, and Mayor, excuse me, so good to see you. And I know Burchett was here a minute ago. He's still here. I'll bow to both of y'all. Are there any other elected officials I need to bow to, by the way? Thank you both for being here. And I talked to Madeline right after she was elected and told her that the best job in America is being mayor of a city. There's no question. She seems to feel that that was correct, and I think is enjoying her job. And Burchett, I actually know Burchett from the time that I knew Edwards, because Burchett's dad was discipline at the University of Tennessee. Now, I won't tell you how I actually met him, but I've known... that's right. So, Burchett, congratulations on another election, and again, good to be with all of y'all. What I'd like to do today is to just give a few opening comments. I have been to Southeast Asia the first week of recess, to 4 countries there, Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore, and the Philippines, relative to what's happening in South China Sea with China redrawing the territorial waters and just the effect that it's had. I've been throughout West Tennessee and Central or Middle Tennessee, and today was up in Kingsport, or began there, and started working my way back down. But you know, recess is a time when we travel and share a little bit about what we're thinking, but mostly hear from you. So I'm going to start by saying that, you know, relative to what we're all here about today, for me, the biggest moment in my public life, being mayor, before that being commissioner of finance with SRW here, who was head of personnel and very feared. The greatest public moment in my life was when I got a call from Volkswagen. I'd built the industrial site in Chattanooga they located on. We had the interchange built in. By the time I was a senator, it was time to recruit heavily, and made the first call to Volkswagen, and we had the meetings at my home at night. I'd fly home from the Senate, miss a few votes, come back, but finally they announced, and it was the greatest moment in my public life. As a matter of fact, I was in an energy hearing when I got the call, and I was so overwhelmed emotionally because I knew 2,000 jobs immediately, families, offshoots, that I couldn't even talk with them on the phone. I had to embarrass myself and call them back. And then to work again to get the expansion, which is going to add another 2,000 jobs, but most importantly for our state, establish a research and development facility. Many people have missed what that means, but we're the first state in the South to have a research and development facility in the automotive industry. And then a few weeks later, by the way, well, I'll get to that in a minute. Weeks later, to come up here to Clinton, Tennessee, and SL Industries announces a South Korean company, a lot of jobs. And then last week to be out in Madison, and Madison County, and Pacific announced jobs. And by the way, when I was out there, they've got a big mega site, and they say, Corker, we like this Volkswagen thing, but what about this mega site? And I wanted to share with them that while the governor and I were in Germany and inking the deal and coming back the next day to announce in Chattanooga, we actually went to another country in the, quote, region and began working on another OEM. And so I just want to say we really, as a state, because we've worked together, because we've kept a vision. Lamar Alexander was really the father of the automobile industry back in the days when he was governor. But we've kept a vision, and really for a state established an incredible knowledge and niche, if you will, relative to automotive manufacturing. Now, Madeline was telling me about something else that I don't know much about and want to learn about, and I know that many are not in the automotive industry, but I just want to say there's nothing that I enjoy more, nor that I think means more to people, than really doing everything you can to ensure that heads of households, of families, have good paying jobs. And again, as I look at our state, whether we've had Republicans or Democrats in office as governor, somehow we've been able to keep a pretty steady vision of economic development, and each has emphasized it in a different way, but it's been a good, steady progress, and our state has benefited. What I don't see at the federal level is a vision. And one of the frustrating things about serving in the Senate is, you know, you're one of 100. You're one of 535 when you count the House. And what I see is we lack a vision as a nation. And, you know, there's all kind of adages you could use as a biblical verse. You know, when without vision the people perish. Slight reduction in words. What I see up there is without vision, a lot of bickering, a lot of focus and majoring in the minors, and not a lot of non-unity, a lot of non-coming together. And so I've been speaking a great deal, not about the election that's coming up in November, but about the election that's coming up in 2016, and hoping that somehow in our nation we'll have a real debate on both sides of the aisle about the future of our nation. And hopefully it'll be a focus on economic growth, on supporting entrepreneurialism, on ensuring that when you get out there and you're successful, you're rewarded, on, by the way, and importantly, making sure that our generation, and I know there's some younger people who are in a courteous way standing in the back so all of you older folks can sit down, but seriously, we're the first generation, I think, in our country's history who are about to leave the country in lesser good shape than they found it. That's an incredible thing to think about. And I've been in the Senate for 7.5 years now, and it seems like we just skate. I mean, no matter how hard we push to try to deal with some of the big issues of our country, it seems like all we do is skate. And I'm just hoping that somehow, again, we'll have this vision that will cause Americans, by the way, to rise up and realize that as a nation, there are some things we need to sacrifice. Growth obviously cures a lot of ills, but we need to be willing to not shy away from the tough decisions. And let me just give you a few examples, and I'll close with one foreign policy statement. I'm going to harp on Medicare one more time. I've done it at every one of Mike's events, but I don't know of a Republican or Democrat that wishes anything to drastically change for any senior. I've got a lot of friends that are my age. I'm 62, and there are 20 million Americans in my category that are coming on the rolls over the next decade. Let me just do the math for a bunch of business folks that are very smart. The average couple in America, both heads of households working, pays into our system over their lifetime $122,000 in today's dollars. That includes the part the employer pays on their behalf. You know, you as employers know you pay half, the employee pays half. That same couple, two heads of households working all of their life, will then take out of the Medicare system $387,000 in today's dollars. It's all time weighted, equivalent. So 122 in, 387 out. If it was a business, you'd want no part of it. And basically, those gaps, by the way, grow. Every time the stats come out by a bipartisan group, that gap grows. Unbelievable to me. And we know it. We know that we're going to hit the wall. We know that people are going to be harmed. And yet we continue to deal with it. I'll just give you two shorter-term examples. I called July, this last July, it's before an election, Generational Theft Month. Okay, because politicians, what's happening in America today is politicians, I mean, people, the American people, I hate to say it, the majority of the American people like to be pandered to. And they want politicians that will, give them the good news, if you will, not deal with the tough issues, I feel something changing, or at least I hope I feel something changing. But one example would be the highway program. I mean, I've been in Washington since came in January of 07. Since 08, we've had 11 short-term reauthorizations of the highway. You got to be kidding! It's crazy. We've had 5 transfers directly out of the general fund into a trust fund that's supposed to be paid for by user fees. 5. Now, let me tell you, when you take the money out of the general fund, it's not paid for. It's absolute generational theft. It's people who represent you wanting to look good to you, not the program. They don't want the program to shut down, but instead they're causing these young people in the back to have even a greater debt. Veterans. Some of you may get mad at me about this. I voted against, obviously. I voted against every short-term extension. Made some headway this time, though, where we almost forced Congress. I led this effort to deal with it this year. People don't want to deal with it before the election. So I said, well, let's deal with it during lame duck. Well, we don't want to do that. So, when are we going to deal with the tough issues? On the veterans bill, look, I love veterans. I won't take a back seat to anybody in this room. I was in the Philippines just 10 days ago walking amongst the largest number of graves of Americans on foreign soil with crosses and stars of David. No way you can be in the middle of that and just not be overwhelmed. Nor can you not be overwhelmed by seeing these unbelievable young men and women in Iraq and Afghanistan. Unbelievable. I support them. I support us doing everything we can for them. We passed a bill on the floor in July that by the time it's fully implemented, it's going to cost you $35 billion a year unpaid for. Unpaid for. Straight transfers out of the general fund, not paid for. It's going to become an entitlement. And again, I was one of 3 senators to vote against it. And I've caught some grief from veterans. But what I say back is, guys, I just think if you elect us with a $4 trillion budget each year, $4 trillion we spend of your money, that if we want to create a program to honor the sacrifice of our veterans, we should have the discipline that you have had to pay for it. It's easy to take their money down the road and make us look good today. It's much harder to do the very things that our veterans have had to do to be the kind of people that they are. But that's what's happening. And I just, it breaks my heart. I mean, it seems like every month something is happening there to, I think, make our country weaker. And I'll digress to say that I was in China, South Korea, and Japan a year and a half ago. We had new leadership in all 3 countries. In my role, I felt it was important for me to be there. We've got friends in South Korea. Oh, they wonder about us. We got friends in Japan, and they wonder a little bit about us. As a matter of fact, you've seen them recently sort of re-understanding their constitution, haven't you, where they're now beginning to develop some of their own national security abilities because, again, of concern. But in China, let me tell you, this is, I hate to admit, I'm kind of embarrassed. I'm a United States Senator. In China, kind of pat you on the head. And look, Corker, y'all are a nation in decline. Any nation that doesn't have the ability to deal with its fiscal issues like y'all, we know that y'all are a declining power. We are a rising power. And you're seeing that, by the way, play out right now in the South China Sea. So let me close with this, and I'll take questions. I could spend, one of my favorite topics right now is to, not because of the good things that are happening, but is to explain to people in Tennessee some of the experiences that I've been having around the world and some of the causes, some of the predictions, what I think is going to, I could give you a travelogue, if you will, about Syria, what's happening there, what's happening because of us not having a policy there, I might have, but what's happening there, what's happened in Iraq, and both were, by the way, very predicted and predictable. They really were. I mean, just go back a year or so. Go back 2 years ago and just look at the comments of all of us who've been concerned about what was going to happen. We could talk a little bit about Iran and concerns there about what may happen with this nuclear agreement, although I'm strongly supportive of us diplomatically coming to a resolve there. We could talk about Ukraine, which again, Russia had 40,000 troops on the border. That was the time to hit them with sectoral sanctions, so economically they would feel that there was going to be some pain. Instead, we let the genie out of the bottle. They come on into eastern Ukraine, and all of a sudden Putin's riding this high horse of incredible popularity. Very difficult now to get it back in the bottle. And candidly, even if he wanted to, he'd have difficulty doing it. And then, as I mentioned, what's happening in China. But what I really want to say to a group of people like you that are creating real jobs, the flip side of all that is this. What I also see around the world is I see people all over the world wanting to emulate this free enterprise system that we have. I see hundreds of millions of people, literally, I've seen each individual person, have been to countries where hundreds of millions of people around the world have been lifted out of poverty because they want to be like us. They want to have a free enterprise system where hard work, earned success takes place. And so I'm proud to be with a group of people like you that embrace that. I'm proud to be with leaders who are looking for more opportunities for the community and make sure that happens. And I just want to tell you that, again, it's a tremendous privilege to be with people like you that Mike said, yes, we're invited so we can have this kind of conversation, because I still believe, in spite of the problems that we have, we are by far the greatest nation on earth. And if we will just lead as the greatest nation on earth, if we will continue to espouse these great values that have made each of you successful, I still believe that we will continue to be that and that we can impact the world in ways you cannot imagine. Free trade agreements. I just go to that for a minute. The free trade agreement, TPP, is so important to us. I mean, we can either raise the standards in Asia relative to trade, relative to labor agreements, relative to state-owned enterprises. I mean, we really don't want to compete with state-owned enterprises, do we? Even though I just left one, by the way, TVA. The fact is, we want people to rise to our standard. Well, let me tell you what's happening right now. While we're taking so long on TPP, China, on the other hand, is trying to create a trade agreement called RECEP. They want to lower the standards. So we can either be out there leading and challenging, and I know right now the president's worried about his base, worried about the AFL-CIO, and we haven't passed trade promotion authority yet. I think we will, by the way, and I think we're going to move ahead, but we're on the verge of not doing that. But my point is, if we will continue, there are strategic things we can do around the world to make sure that, again, the kind of values, the kind of standards, the free enterprise system that all of you cherish, we can ensure is more firmly implanted around the world. And I think that creates a world that's much more secure and stable. And with us having 4.5% of the world's population, but 22% of the world's gross domestic product. Think about that. That's a nice ratio. We actually benefit more from world stability than almost any country in the world. So thank you for the privilege of doing what I do. Thank you for the tremendous honor to represent you and our nation around the world. And with that, I'll stop and take questions and comments. Yes, sir.
It's indeed a pleasure and an honor to be with you today, sir. I'm a small manufacturer in Johnson City, Tennessee. I manufacture meals ready to eat. They're for disasters
and for Ukraine. But anyway, go ahead.
Yes,
yeah.
As a matter of fact,
yeah.
It's amazing what you're saying is because all over the world we're having problems, both in Afghanistan, Syria, and we have many, many refugees that are running from one situation to another. But looking at home, we are the Americas. We are North America. North America takes encompass Canada, the United States, and Mexico. Canada has worked very well, and I am a Canadian very well, and has a high respect for America. And you have Mexico, likewise, that is trying to work some kind of a program. Do you not think that it would be appropriate that we're running around all over the world trying to make everybody at peace, where you have many tribes that really don't even understand each other, and you try to get them to understand our philosophy, when we're at home with North America, that if we join as a community, that we are stronger together as a community, will we not be stronger and look at better as a unity, being Canada, the United States, and Mexico as one part, and not have 57,000 children sitting at the border in camps with no food and nothing, and we're sending off aid to Afghanistan and other places when our own North American territory is not being watched over.
Yeah, well, look, no doubt, you know, the relationships that we have with Canada and Mexico are incredibly important. And finally, Mexico has a president that is just, I mean, I was with him at Davos at the World Economic Forum and sat with his ministers, and gosh, what an impressive person. And they're altering, you know, the way their petroleum production is going to take place. And all of a sudden now with Canada, ourselves, and Mexico, totally, it's going to be a game changer relative to our strategic relationship. So I think the relationship we have with Mexico is hugely changing. I don't know if you know this or not, I voted for the immigration reform bill. I voted for it. I actually crafted the amendment that took it from, you know, in the United States Senate today, you cannot pass anything anymore without 60 votes. It didn't used to be that way. We've always had the cloture rule, but you just didn't use it. Now we use it on everything. And so the bill was stuck at 57 votes. I crafted an amendment relative to security with John Hoeven in North Dakota, and it passed with 68 votes. The bill did. And so I agree we need to have a more sane immigration policy. And I've met with the president of Honduras and Guatemala just a few weeks ago, and I understand the push of why the kids are coming up. They have parents who want them to escape the narco activities that are taking place, which, in fairness, I hate to say this, it's a big part of our fault, right? I mean, what's the pull for the narcotics? I mean, I don't know if any of y'all have traveled through Central America, but God, it is devastating. Devastating what our demand for narcotics has done to those countries. It's amazing. I mean, these people, I don't want to get off topic, but so we have the push. The pull, in fairness, has been the fact that there's been a misunderstanding, or maybe there's been an understanding that with a lot of the executive orders that have been laid down, that if you make it to the border, you're scot-free. And so what these coyotes have been doing is they've been marketing that, and they've been taking advantage of it. And what's changed over the last year has been the fact that when people get to the border, when they used to try to avoid the border control, now they're turning themselves in. Hey, because what's happened with this other than Mexico policy that we passed in 2008, there's a confusion, and so the kids are now, we got several of them here in Tennessee, several hundred of them. But back to the aid issue. I do agree, not necessarily in Mexico. I think we're actually working about right with Mexico. But I do agree that we've done a terrible job with the countries right below, with Central America. I think we've done a terrible job in working with those countries in a way that has cause them to evolve in a different way, so there isn't that push. But I understand your point about Canada and Mexico. They're very strategic, very important, and what I've seen is a tremendous deepening of relationship with Mexico, especially, we've had some good leaders down there, but especially with this young, bright star that I really believe is going to create tremendous economic growth in Mexico itself.
Further to that, in your immigration policy, when a foreigner comes into your country and wants to invest money, a lot of Americans are going out of this country and investing in other countries.
Which we applaud to. Okay.
The fact is the amount of a small business entrepreneur that invests millions of dollars in your country, and for him to get a green card or to get the status because he's hiring 75 people in his operations, and he cannot get the status as a small business because he's not American. And I don't understand that philosophy.
Well, I'm not sure I understand what you're saying, because this EB-5 program is going through the roof.
EB-5?
Yeah, I mean, I've got Yeah, no, I think I'd love to have, if you don't mind, so I can take questions from others, but I'd love to have one of our staffers follow up with you. But this EB-5 program, where if you invest $500,000 and hire so many people, or invest $1 million and hire so many people, gives you instant status in this country. And I have actually some questions about the aggressiveness of the EB-5 program, so I'm on the other side of the equation a little bit. I want people investing here, but I don't want people to be able to buy citizenship. You understand what I'm saying? But I think there is something happening that you possibly are not aware of, and our staff follows up with you. I'm going to make sure. Why don't you make sure you ask them? I know they'll follow up with you. Okay? Yes, sir.
Senator, thank you for your service. I was curious if you could share your thoughts on what will happen with XMA.
Yeah.
And in the efforts to review their charter, will be higher requirements for them to provide more services to small businesses?
So there are a lot of reforms that are being looked at. XM Bank, I don't know how many of you pay attention. They do about $130 billion of export financing. By the way, it also is a state-owned enterprise. And so, many countries around the world, especially China, are very aggressive in export financing. And what they do is provide financing in places where it's not readily available. And they do it many times at low interest rates, which allow their manufacturers to benefit, to have an advantage over other companies. And so we're having this debate. I've got a conflict, Paul, and that is this. I've spent 2 years writing a bill to wind down Fannie and Freddie. And, we have a situation right now with those entities where we've got no competition and no capital. Terrible place for the country to be. And by the way, they now are state-owned enterprises. It's amazing, isn't it? So we've created a situation to move them towards a lot of capital and tremendous competition. And obviously there's a lot of built-in constituencies. And so when now XM's up, I've been spending 2 years to go in exactly the opposite direction. So XM's up, and on one hand, I don't want to harm Americans' ability to ship goods overseas. I called Jeff Enmelt right before I came home, who's the CEO of GE, GE, Caterpillar, and a couple other entities, Boeing for sure, benefit tremendously from XM Bank. They're the big exporters. And I called Jeff and I said, look, I don't think he'd mind me saying, he said, look, Corker, it's not the financing rates that matter. What happens in these African countries in particular, if China is in there with their export financing entity, the countries think it's important to China that they do business with them. When XM's in there trying to get us to do, they think the United States of America is behind us selling a product in the country. He said it makes a difference. So I just want you to know, Paul, I think it's going to be authorized for an additional period of time. And obviously, they're asking for going from 130 to 160. We've asked for some reforms, like a basic one would be, we'd like the board of directors to actually review the larger loans. We kind of think that would be an important thing to do. We think it happens at most financial institutions. So far, they're unwilling to do that. We've also looked at, hey, if there are a few entities that use it over and over and over again, should we look at a little different charge for them? I mean, is there something about them being their bank that we ought to look at differently? So I'm just going to be honest. I think everybody in Washington that cares about this issue knows this. I'm kind of on the bubble. On one hand, I don't want to do anything that lessens exporters' ability to ship overseas. On the other hand, God, I've spent so much brain power, what little I have, and our staff has spent a lot, they've got a lot, on trying to get us to a place where we're less dependent on state-owned enterprises, and yet we have this one that's here. So I don't know. I think it will be short-term reauthorized. There will be a push for reforms to focus it more on smaller enterprises. I don't know if we'll be successful with the dysfunction that we have right now with a Republican House and a Democratic Senate. But that's an issue that everybody's looking at, I think, relative to Well, let me say everybody. There's some people that just want to reauthorize it, period. And there's some people that don't want to have anything to do with it, period, even though they may think it's the right thing to do. And there's a group of folks, I'm going to guess probably 20 or 30, that are okay reauthorizing it, but would like to see some of the kind of reforms you were just mentioning. Yes, sir.
Staying with the Erickson Land Bank, first thank you for your service.
Thank you.
A lot of the comments that I hear about the Erickson Land Bank, when you read the paper, you review, everybody talks about loans. And I get
Talks about what?
about the loan side of the bank.
Yeah.
We're a small business, we utilize it quite a bit, but not for loans, but for insurance on our receivables.
Yeah.
And for a small company like us, 15% of our sales, we export. We're a small company, we're over here in Knoxville, it's our only location. If I have an issue collecting the sales, I can't jump on my plane and go grab somebody by the collar and say, pay me.
Yeah.
And I also can't really, without that insurance, extend terms to my customers overseas. So, the loan side is one thing, the insurance side is something I'd like to hear about. I agree with banking reforms. What about the insurance side of this? What kind of conversation do you have about that?
There isn't an in-depth conversation that's happening right now. I'll just be honest. I mean, I think people knew that it wasn't prime time in July. It may be attached. My guess is we're gonna have something happen in the 2 weeks that we're back, called a CR, continuing resolution to fund government. I don't think that either side of the aisle wants to shut down government, right? Yeah, it's just, I think those people who thought it was a bright idea realize maybe it's not. So my guess is something like an XM extension may be part of a CR. It'll be short term. But we haven't gotten into the debate about the insurance piece versus the other. And it's unfortunate. I'm on the banking committee, which is where this should come through. I don't understand. Has not really wished to hearing. I mean, I think trying to figure out a way to scoot it. Let me go back to my skating. This is one of those issues that I think we're going to skate by for a short amount of time. But I'll tell you this, and I told our bankers this during the financial reform. People think that J.P. Morgan, that Bank of America, that these big entities have tremendous clout in Washington. They don't have any clout in Washington. Our community bankers are the ones that have clout in Washington, because there are guys back home that are making loans and creating economic development. Sure, we know them all. But back to GE, yeah, we know all these guys, but it's a lot more important to us that the small guys, smaller companies like yours, have opportunities to work globally. So I'd like for our staff to hear a little bit more about what your experiences are, because the poster child of this is Boeing and GE and others. And I do think that, yeah, and candidly, it's guys like you that I hear may be benefiting from it. We've never met before, but I'd like to know more about how it's helping the smaller enterprises in our state.
Right now, I spend $2,000 or $3,000 a year insuring sales. If I went out on the private market to buy that same insurance, it would cost me $20,000.
And it costs you how much?
About $2 or $3 grand.
Yeah.
The bank requires us to do quite a bit of due diligence, which I think makes sense. We should. They force us to do our homework, credit checks, and all sorts of things. We have to do a lot of stuff just in order to get the insurance on those receivables. And then, since this conversation has been in the news quite a bit, we thought, well, let's just go see. Let's talk to some other groups and see what it would cost us, and then 2 or 3 went to 1. That's a lot of money. That's a big difference.
I'd still like to get your name and telephone number for us to follow up with later when it begins to be an issue that we actually focus on. Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is John. I'm exports, and we're an export management company. One of our clients here is Wampler Sausage. And our frustration right now is, we've raised money, we put our assets up to get this company started. And, I think everybody knows the containers that come over from China that end up in Walmart and Target, those are full. Most of the containers that go back over are empty. So we're trying to do the right thing, with the trade imbalance. But our issue, and I'll give you one example, is in China, there's a steroid called ractopamine that's used in pigs. The amount that's allowed in the U.S., the Chinese can make it, use their pigs with twice the amount of ractopamine that we can in the U.S., but we can't sell any pork to China that has any ractopamine, even a trace, they'll destroy the whole container. So our frustration is the ractopamine-free pork is much more expensive because the pigs aren't as big. So we partner with Daewoo International, one of the biggest companies in the world, and they're trying to, they have buyers for us in China, but we're not competitive. And the whole reason, is political. It has nothing to do with, the ractopamine.
Right.
So our
Got it.
frustration is, we're trying to do our part, but, I know there's a free trade agreement, between the U.S. and South Korea, but there's got to be something to level the playing field with China.
Yeah, so the TPP thing has not been talked about a great deal in our country. We have folks on, it's typically been a base issue to the Democratic side. I'm just being honest. They would admit this, okay, because of organized labor and other environmental issues, those kinds of things. But it's actually becoming a little bit of an issue on the Republican side with, for lack of a better description, some of the Tea Party movements that have taken place and people's focus instead of on our neighbors on isolation, which, I gotta be honest, guys. I mean, isolating 4.5% of the population unto itself, you're going to see our standard of living would plummet. So that's why this TPP agreement, to me, is so important. If we can get Japan is in the midst of negotiations, if we can pull that region together, Vietnam, Malaysia, all of those countries together to join us in TPP, China then is unable to well, they can continue, but the goal is that China actually accedes to this same agreement once it's done. And in those agreements, the details that you just pointed out that nobody in this room has ever heard of in their life until you just spoke, those are the kind of details that get worked out and those barriers that get knocked down. So I'm not glad you're having this problem, but I appreciate you illustrating the tremendous need for us to level the playing field, to have standards that everybody lives by, because China does it all the time. They're doing it nonstop. I mean, they create artificial barriers, not because of this steroid you're talking about, but to use that politically to enhance, the growth and I mean, what China worries about most in their own country is stability. They're worried about their revolting, if you will, because the economic growth. Thanks for pointing it out. And I don't know of a greater champion for TPP in the United States than myself. And I just am so disappointed that we haven't passed Trade and Promotion Authority, which is a fast-track way of making this happen. And until we do that, we're not going to have a trade agreement. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I work for Denso, and we're located just south of here.
Been there.
Yeah, trade. We've been there 25 years now, and we employ about 3,000 people here, and I've got 1,000 math. It's kind of say. Two biggest challenges we face as a manufacturer is technology innovation, because to be competitive, you got to be able to do more automation and minimize manpower. Having saying that, workforce development is critical, especially the technical side. So we have two challenges. We're not the only Lone Ranger that stays with us. And so we're starting to work with local institutions like Oak Ridge National Lab, UT, and Federal Secretary of State, so we can have a pipeline of here. We just started a RAMP organization, a 20-county consortium, about 700 companies in this area. And we're trying to work with each other now, how we can help each other out. And at Denso, we're used to working by ourselves. That's the best ideas, but we recognize now that we've got to work with other places and share best practices. So that's a challenge we face. Workforce development is a big one.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think y'all know we took a baby step forward about in the last 60 days to sort of revamp. We got so many competing workforce development programs at the federal level that, the old ones never get done away with. We end up having just a lot of nothing. And we took I say baby step. It was maybe a medium-sized step towards revamping what we're doing at the federal level. I still know the best training occurs through state entities, and there are federal dollars that flow into that. But look, that's the future. I mean, the future is companies collectively working together to make sure that they're creating a pathway for people who want to be in the technology world or in the manufacturing world to have a pathway there. And one of the things, look, one of the most dealing with Volkswagen and getting to the end was a very frustrating process, to say the least. I'd expand if we were not being covered by, the media outlets here. One of the things I learned, though, was in the German culture, they really hold up journeymen. They value them. And it's so great to see, okay? I mean, I toured their plant, and, it's an honorable thing. I mean, they have people in management in the company that are journeymen and have risen up. And I do think we've got to not just change the training, but change the culture of honoring people who want to be outstanding. And, you look at these robots in the auto industry now, and I know they exist all over. God, how in the world can anybody figure out how to make one of those work? But whoever can, these people who go out there and make that work, we should honor that and hold it up. So I think it's not just the training, but I think we've got to have a little bit of a mindset difference in our country if we really believe that manufacturing is an important part of our economy. I know you do. I know I do. And I appreciate so much you bringing that up. The other piece is we've got to have a tax code that incents the management side of the company to really want to expand and to be rewarded in an appropriate way. And I think all of you know our tax code is just so antiquated for global operators. I mean, to have to not have a territorial system like every other developed country in the world. I mean, we have these inversions that are being created, and unfortunately, there are some people's response in Washington is to create Hotel California. You can check in and never check out, which, maybe I'm kind of thinking a better solution is why don't we have a better tax code that incents people from other countries to want to be here? But anyway, thank you for your comment. We don't pay attention. So, yeah, thank you.
I'm Dr. Mark Cacciatarian. I'm the Vice President of Research and Development at ABT Molecular Imaging. We're a startup company based in Knoxville. We have a great product for the emerging markets. We've had success around the world, except in China and India, which of course are the biggest markets. We manufacture here, we do everything here, and we don't know how to break into those markets. Based on your experience, is it partnering with a big company that makes a complementary device? Is it distribution channels? Is it government? Yeah. Any advice that you or your staff would have?
Instead of me giving you some flippant answer, what I'd much rather do is take your name and number. And Jane, who was so nice to tell me this last question, we really do follow up with people like you. What I'd rather do is hook you up with the resources that do exist in Washington to help, coach you in that regard. Because I know they do different things with different industries. China handles those differently based on what they feel the threat to be to their own workforce. And I just would hate to flippantly give you an answer. But if you'll leave us information, we'll definitely follow up with you, okay? But one thing I will say, we're on recess again. I know y'all think we go on vacation, but we're on recess for a couple more weeks. So if you'd give us 2 or 3 weeks to maybe 3 weeks to respond, it'd be good. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Yes, sir.
First off, I want to thank you. When I see you on the Sunday morning talk shows or in the media, I'm proud of you myself.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I work for Dow Chemical, but I have the honor of representing the chamber on Knox County Airport. I'm a representative of manufacturing and all business to the county airport.
Thank you.
And the county airport does a great job. But one of the things that confuses me and concerns me is back in Washington. The regulations keep on changing. They keep on getting more confusing. They don't seem to be tied to laws,
Yeah.
but to some entity that feels like they can do what they want to do.
Yeah.
How do we stop that?
Yeah, I don't know. Thank you for your opening comment. One of the things that, has been so apparent up there, I mean, we create laws, and I don't know that I fully understood. I know I didn't fully understand it until I got there. We pass laws. Those laws empower agencies to implement those, and the regulatory process itself is far more detailed, far more encompassing than the laws we actually create. So it's a massive problem, and unfortunately, it's like you guys in business. I mean, what y'all want to do is you want to see growth. You want to build. You want to invest capital. You want to create jobs. Well, think about what legislators want to do. They want to pass bills. They want their name on a bill. They want to go back home and say, I passed this. What we don't do is unpass things. You understand? I mean, we just keep layering on top. And again, it's a human instinct to want to do that, right? I mean, you're going to be there a limited amount of time, and what you'd like to do is solve this problem, but there's no incentive to reduce. And so, when I talked about this vision, I mean, that very much to me should be a part of it. You remember Al Gore was vice president, and when he was there, he was tasked with, making government more efficient. I actually applaud that. The problem is that you don't have that continuum. I mean, administrations come in, they want to leave their mark here. They want to, there's not this, in a democracy like we have, there's not this continual effort of reduction. So it is sad, and there's so much that we don't need to be doing. But it needs to be a part of our culture, and I apologize that you're having issues. If there are things that we can help you with to help resolve it, I hope you'll talk with us if there's an agency that's outlined. I will say this. We have been able, when agencies have been overreaching, we have been able, and they really have been overreaching. It's not just a situation where somebody's got an axe to grind. We've been able to talk with the heads of these agencies, follow up with letters of request, again, in an appropriate manner, and we have been able to generate a good outcome. So if you want to try to work with us where you see this happening in a systematic way, we're glad to help you. Or even anecdotally, we're glad to help you. Okay? Yes, sir. Yeah. It's getting close to the end of the day, and I've been doing this all day long, but I like these guys so much. If you don't mind, I'd like to answer a few more questions. Okay, thank you. So,
Volkswagen
yeah.
is a giant coup. I work for a German company. I know what you mean about the culture of the large place together. East Tennessee, if it were not for foreign investment, would be dead. Not dying, dead. Because if you look at Volkswagen, South Africa, it's been nothing but foreign investment. In fact, a Chinese company just opened a boot factory in Jefferson City because we can't make boots in this country, but China can come over here and do it. So all the investment has been this way, and yet I don't recall a single investment by a domestic company. I don't recall a large investment by a domestic. Now, is there any? It seems like the federal government still encourages, and in different ways, the tax code and different laws, taking jobs to other countries and discourages domestic investment. What's wrong with this picture? Is there an opportunity at the federal level to change that dynamic?
Well, first of all, like you, I recognize that foreign direct investment has employed a lot of Tennesseans. And I applaud it. And when this Chinese company builds boots, makes boots in Jefferson City, those are American jobs. So here's what we have happen. I don't think there is I don't even understand the policy that, I know people are saying what you just said, and I know you're just repeating. You haven't, it doesn't sound like you've dug into the issue much. I don't know what policy people are referring to when they say that we encourage companies here to invest overseas, except this. Back to the territorial tax system. What happens in America, No other country, no other developed countries like this. But let's say you have a plant in Ireland and it's making a product and you're generating a huge amount of profits. Every other country allows you to bring that money back to your country and just pay the taxes where you made the money. Our country, you pay the taxes in Ireland, and then you pay the difference between the taxes in Ireland and here to bring it back. And somehow people on the other side of the aisle are saying, well, that's encouraging people. They want to keep it that way, but say that somehow that's not encouraging people to invest. I think it is. I mean, we've got $2 trillion trapped overseas. People are not going to bring the money back here and pay a penalty. Nobody, I mean, some people do it. Not many people want to do that. And so they are investing, they'd rather make a capital investment some other place and not bring it back here. So we do need to do away with that, okay? But I don't know how people can perceive if we do away with that, which a lot of people, I don't mean to be political, but on the other side of the aisle believe if we create a territorial system, somehow we're encouraging jobs. It's just the opposite. We're encouraging people to bring capital back here and make investments. Now that said, let's face it. The reason that German company is making boots in Jefferson City is they want to supply U.S. customers. And let's face it, when our U.S. global conglomerates build plants in Russia, they're doing it because they want to serve Russian citizens, right? That's what they're doing. I assure you, that's what they're doing. They want to sell products to people in Russia. When they build plants in China, why are they doing it? They want to sell products in China. And so when people make foreign direct investment here, they're doing it to serve U.S. customers. Those are American jobs. Candidly, I want to see that happen. I think the more globalization that occurs that way, the more chances we have over the longer haul for peace. Now, let me tell you one equation that's changing that. Low natural gas prices in the United States of America is totally changing the equilibrium. There's a security conference in Munich that happens once a year. I was there a year and a half ago, and at lunch during this security conference, the big CEOs in Germany of the largest companies, they host a luncheon for the U.S. senators who are there. And at this particular luncheon, I was there with McCain, and Graham, and Ayotte, and a couple of others, and the whole focus was on yours truly, which I liked. And it wasn't because of me, but it was because of Tennessee. And it was because of the German relationship that we have with Wacker and Volkswagen and so many other countries and companies. And what they were saying to me was that what's happening to totally change that relationship of people building plants in countries to supply their customers is this low natural gas price we have. Now we have German companies wanting to build plants in Tennessee and the U.S. to supply European customers because our energy prices are so low. So one of the reasons I was at TVA before I came over here, I don't spend a lot of time on TVA, but I do want to make sure they've got, as SRW knows, business people on the board, because I want to make sure that over time we continue to have the low-cost, reliable energy production that we have here in the Tennessee Valley, because at the end of the day, as long as we do that, we have this equation taking place, especially with companies who use natural gas as a feedstock. So that's all I know about that topic. I think you disagree with part of what I said, but that's what democracy is about. Yes, sir.
Stanley, thank you again for your service. I work for Alcoa, and we have a great example of your energy situation. We have a refinery in Texas, and when gas prices were $8 to $10 an MMBtu, we were basically shutting that place down. And right now, that's one of our more profitable refineries in our global system. Mm-hmm. So appreciate your comment on energy and natural gas in particular. It's a key ingredient for our refining process. Mm-hmm. Further, again, like Denso, we have the same kinds of issues. We're taking part in at least 2 different types of programs where we get interns, we teach them things and bring them in so they can become German later on. And that's been very successful, working with DOE and with the local finally, from the perspective of an American company investing just here in town, our automotive expansion, we spoke a lot about it. Our automotive expansion is going to go online in July of next year.
Good.
$300 million, a couple hundred new jobs, and I appreciate all your support.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And I have to tell you, one of the big issues for y'all really was, I know you're talking about natural gas, but just your expansions here had a whole lot to do with TVA, was it not? Huh? Big deal. And I just think what worries me a little bit about the relationship that we have with TVA, no White House in America on either side of the aisle, gives a rip about TVA. It's a nuisance. Every so often they've got to appoint board members, and all they know they're doing is making a bunch of people mad by not selecting people that want to be on the board. And so they spend no time on it. There's no vetting. It ends up being sort of a political process. And look, I have a great relationship with most every board member on the TVA board, but I'm just being honest. No one cares about it. And so you have this thing that's down here that matters so much to us, right? And y'all are looking at somebody over here. Is there a board member in the room? But it matters so much to us. You wouldn't have done this expansion had they not worked with you a little bit on the energy. Is that right? Sure. And so it's a big deal to us. And I know that there are a lot of people that don't want to change anything. And right now, I think we've got a CEO who's really focused on making sure that TVA is what we want it to be. But you just worry over time with really nobody minding the shop because the White House doesn't care. And I have wondered if there's a different model of some kind where our governors play a different role. They care for sure, or someone else. But right now, I think we're at least in the middle of the road someplace. What's that?
Northwest, our council that used to work with BPA. They had the group, the governors, we were on a council, and they appointed people to this council to work with BPA. Northwest, I used to work with.
Yeah. Well, listen, Jane, thank you for the outstanding job you do, and I'm sorry I disrespected you by not stopping. And I know you brought in the bigger hook, so I'm going to stop. Thank you so much.
Jane's going to kill me, but if you got just a minute, we have two great companies here that the U.S. Department of Commerce wants to give an award to. And Rob, if you'll come forward.
Sure. The first award, and I want to thank Senator Corker for being here. These companies have done a fabulous job of increasing international sales. The first award goes to Nanomechanics. They make specialized scientific instruments that characterize materials on a nanoscale. For the award, we have Sebastian Ward. And he's entered 13 markets in less than a year and made their first landmark $1 million in international sales alone.
Okay. How do you do that?
Well, through help from guys like Rob Leach are able to put us in touch with distributors around the world, from India to China, Taiwan, Korea.
Here at the chamber.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Right.
So it's been a delight doing that. We're a small company, but our biggest resource is the minds of the people that work there. We have some brilliant people that work there, and it really gives us the ability to take innovation that's developed here in Oak Ridge, in the great state of Tennessee, and bring it to the world. So we are very humbled and very honored to be receiving this, and thank you again, sir. I know I'm going to keep it short here.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
they're being really too kind. It's really their hard work, and it has, I'm just a cheerleader really in a lot of ways. The second award goes to Jeffco. It's a new Aztec Industries acquisition. They make portable drilling rigs for the water, well, and oil and gas industry. They have a traditional base of selling in Africa, unlike many countries, but they've also been able to expand that footprint into Algeria, into Angola, and into Kazakhstan. And just from those markets alone, they've captured $15 million to bring back to the U.S. and support U.S. jobs.
Congratulations. Outstanding. Tell us a little bit about it. Well, first, I want to know what Brock Page is in multiple earnings when they bought you.
We'll talk later about that. We are part of the Aztec family company, so we're one of 19 companies of Aztec, headquartered in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And we have a facility in Loudon, Tennessee, and also in Enid, Oklahoma. And I accept this with my co-workers here, and on behalf of over 260 families that are supported through our company. But one of our strategic plans is to do 50% international business.
And how have you expanded so rapidly, especially into the types of countries that were just discussed, which can be some of the toughest?
It is. Jeffco, George E. Phelan Company, is 83 years old. Aztec is bought about 2.5 years ago, but we were building drilling rigs for water for the U.S. military during World War II. So there was a lot of our rigs left there after the war. So we had a presence there. So all we've done is continue the relationships with those governments through the help of Commerce Department and Commercial Services. We've gone out and sought new markets like Kazakhstan. I just came back from Indonesia. We've got operations in Germany, also South Africa, Australia. So one of our main missions is to grow 50% of our business international as a corporate, all of Aztec.
Yeah.
So
Well, congratulations.
we're on our way. Thank you very much.
Again, I want to thank Senator Corker for coming here. I want to thank him for asking us and for you to come and participate in this. I think it's been pretty helpful. It's a very bright group of people in this room. So thank you very much for coming.